You will die! This is the end of you, Swit! You Inma.
You told me that if her brother won, she would be sister to the King of Wayrest, and Riemann would want to keep her for the alliance. But her brother Helseth lost, and has fled with his mother back to Morrowind, and still Riemann has not left her to marry me. Lady Gialine took a long, slow drag of the hookah and blew out dragon's breath, so the scent of blossoms perfumed her gilded chamber. You make a very poor adviser, Cale. I might have spent my time romancing the King of Cloudrest or Alinor instead of the wretched royal husband of Queen Morgia. Cale knew better than to hurt his lady's vanity by the mere suggestion that the King of Firsthold might have come to love his Dunmer queen. Instead, he gave her a few minutes to pause and look from her balcony out over the high cliff palaces of the ancient capital. The moons shone like crystal on the deep sapphire waters of the Abacian Sea. It was ever springtide here, and he could well understand why she would prefer a throne in this land than in Cloudrest or Alinor. Finally, he spoke. The people are with you, my lady. They do not relish the idea of Remmen's dark elf heirs ruling the kingdom when he is gone. I wonder, she said calmly. I wonder if, as the king would not give up his queen for want of alliances, whether she would give herself up out of fear. Of all the people of Firsthold, who most dislikes the Dunmer influence on the court? Is this a trick question, my lady? Asked Cale. The Trebite monks, of course. Their credo has ever been for pure Altmer bloodlines on Somerset, and among the royal families most of all. But, my lady, they make very weak allies. I know, said Gialine, taking up her hookah again thoughtfully, a smile creeping across her face. Morgia has seen to it that they have no power. She would have exterminated them altogether had Remmen not stopped her for all the good they do for the country folk. What if they found themselves with a very powerful one with intimate knowledge of the court of Firsthold, the chief concubine of the king, and all the gold to buy weapons with that her father, the king of Skywatch, could supply? Well armed and with the support of the country people, they would be formidable, nodded Cale. But as your adviser, I must warn you. If you make yourself an active foe of Queen Morgia, you must play to win. She has inherited much of her mother Queen Berenzia's intelligence and spirit of vengeance. She will not know I am her foe until it is too late, shrugged Gialine. Go to the Trebite monastery and bring me Friar Leland. We must strategize our plan of attack. For 2 weeks, Raymond was advised about growing resentment in the countryside from peasants who called Morgia the Black Queen. But it was nothing that he had not heard before. His attention was on the pirates on a small island off the coast called Caluis La. They had been more brazen as late, attacking royal barges in organized raids. To deliver a crushing blow, he ordered the greatest part of his militia to invade the island, an incursion he himself would lead. A few days after Riemann left the capital, the revolt of the Trebite monks exploded. The attacks were well coordinated and without warning. The chief of the guards did not wait to be announced, bursting into Morgia's bedchamber ahead of a flurry of maidservants. "My queen," he said, "it is a revolution." By contrast, Gialine was not asleep when Cale came to deliver the news. She was seated by the window, smoking her hookah and looking at the fires far off in the hills. "Morgia is with council," he explained. "I am certain they are telling her that the Trebite monks are behind the uprising, and that the revolution will be at the city gates by morning." "How large is the revolutionary army in contrast to the remaining royal militia?" asked Gialine. "The odds are well in our favor," said Cale, "though not perhaps as much as we hoped. The country folk, it seems, like to complain about their queen, but stop short of insurrection. Primarily the army is composed of the monks themselves and a horde of mercenaries your father's gold bought. In a way of thinking, it is preferable this way. They are more professional and organized than a common mob. Really, they are a true army, complete with a horn section. If that doesn't frighten the Black Queen into abdication, nothing will," smiled Gialine, rising from her chair. "The poor dear must be beside herself with worry. I must fly to her side and enjoy it." Gialine was disappointed when she saw Morgia come out of the council chambers. Considering that she had been woken from a deep sleep with cries of revolution and had spent the last several hours in consultation with her meagre general force, she looked so. There was a sparkle of proud defiance in her bright red eyes. "My queen," Gialine cried, forcing real tears. "I came as soon as I heard. Will we all be slaughtered?" "A distinct possibility," replied Morgia simply. Gialine tried to read her, but the expressions of women, especially alien women, were a far greater challenge than those of Altmer men. "I hate myself for even thinking to propose this," said Gialine, "but since the cause of their fury is you, perhaps if you were to give up the throne, they might disperse. Please understand, my queen, I am thinking only of the good of the kingdom and our own lives." "I understand the spirit of your suggestion," smiled Morgia, "and I will take it under advisement. Believe me, I've thought of it myself, but I don't think it will come to that." "Have you a plan for defending us?" asked Gialine, contorting her features to an expression she knew bespoke girlish hope. "The king left us several dozen of his royal battle mages," said Morgia. "I think the mob believes we have nothing but palace guards and a few soldiers to protect us. When they get to the gates, are greeted with a wave of fireballs, I find it highly likely that they will lose heart and retreat." "But isn't there some protection they could be using against such an assault?" asked Gialine in her best worried voice. "If they knew about it, naturally there is, but an unruly mob is unlikely to have mages skilled in the arts of restoration by which they could shield themselves from the spells, or mysticism by which they could reflect the spells back on my battle mages. That would be the worst scenario, but even if they were well organized enough to have mystics in their ranks, and enough of them to reflect so many spells, it just isn't done. No battlefield commander would advise such a defense during a siege unless he knew precisely what he was going to be meeting. And then, of course, once the trap is sprung," Morgia winked, "it's too late for a countering spell." "A most cunning solution, Your Highness," said Gialine, honestly impressed. Morgia excused herself to meet with her battle mages, and Gialine gave her an embrace. Cale was waiting in the palace garden for his lady. "Are there mystics among the mercenaries?" she asked quickly. "Several, in fact," replied Cale, bewildered by her query. "Largely rejects from the Sigic order, but they know enough to cast the regular spells of the school." "You must sneak out the city gates and tell Friar Leland to have them cast reflection spells on all the front line before they attack," said Gialine. "That's most irregular battlefield strategy," frowned Cale. "I know it is, fool. That's what Morgia is counting on. There's a gang of battle mages who are going to be waiting on the battlements to greet our army with a barrage of fireballs." Battle mages? I would have thought that King Riemann would have brought them with him to fight the pirates. "You would have thought that," laughed Gialine, "but then we would be defeated. Now go." Friar Lilium agreed with Cale that it was a bizarre, unheard-of way to begin a battle, casting reflection spells on all one's troops. It went against every tradition, and as a Trebite monk, he valued tradition above every other virtue. There was little other choice, though, given the intelligence. He had few enough healers in the army, as it were, and their energies could not be wasted, casting resistance spells. At dawn's light, the rebel army was in sight of the gleaming spires of Firsthold. Friar Lilim gathered together every soldier who knew even the rudimentary secrets of mysticism, who knew how to tap into the elementary conundrums and knots of the energies of magicka. Though few were masters of the art, their combined force was powerful to behold. A great surge of entangling power washed over the army, crackling, hissing, and with their ghostly force. When they arrived at the gates, every soldier, even the least imaginative, knew that no spell would touch him for a long time. Friar Lilim watched his army batter into the gate with the great satisfaction of a commander who has counteracted an unthinkable attack with an outrageous defense. The smile quickly faded from his face. They were met at the battlements not by mages, but by common archers of the palace guard. As the flaming arrows fell upon the Seegers like a red rain, the healers ran in to help the wounded. Their healing spells reflected off the dying men, one after the other. Chaos ruled as the attackers suddenly found themselves defenseless and began a panicked, unorganized retreat. Friar Lilim himself considered briefly holding his ground before fleeing himself. Later, he would send furious notes to Lady Gialine and Cale, but they were returned. Even his best secret agents within the palace were unable to find their whereabouts. Neither had, as it turns out, much previous experience with torture, and they soon confessed their treachery to the king's satisfaction. Cale was executed, and Gialine was sent back with escort to her father's court of Skywatch. He has still to find a husband for her. Riemann, by contrast, has elected not to take a new royal concubine. The common folk of Firsthold consider this break in palace protocol to be more of the sinister alien influence of the Black Queen, and grumble to all who will listen. From the pen of the 1st century 3rd era sage Montekai, 3E63. In the autumntide of the year, Prince Pelagius, son of Prince Uriel, who is son of the Empress Quintira, who is niece of the great Emperor Tiber Septim, came to the high rock city-state of Camlorn to pay court to the daughter of King Volstead. Her name was Quintilla, the most beauteous princess in Tamriel, skilled at all the maidenly skills and an accomplished sorceress. 11 years a widower with a young son named Antiochus, Pelagius arrived at court to find that the city-state was being terrorized by a great demon werewolf. Instead of wooing, Pelagius and Quintilla together went out to save the kingdom. With his sword and her sorcery, the beast was slain, and by the powers of mysticism, Quintilla chained the beast's soul to a gem. Pelagius had the gem made into a ring and married her. but it was said that the soul of the wolf stayed with the couple until the birth of their first child. 3E. 80. "The ambassador from Solitude has arrived, Your Majesty," whispered the steward Balvus. "Right in the middle of dinner," muttered the Emperor weakly. "Tell him to wait." "No, Father, it's important that you see him," said Pelagius, rising. "You can't make him wait and then give him bad news. It's undiplomatic." "Don't go, then. You're much better at diplomacy than I am. We should have all the family here," Emperor Uriel II added, suddenly aware how few people were present at his dinner table. "Where's your mother?" "Sleeping with the archpriest of Kinnereth," Pelagius would have said, but he was, as his father said, diplomatic. Instead he said, "At prayer. And your brother and sister?" "Amiel is in Firsthold, meeting with the Archmagister of the Mages Guild, and Galana, though we won't be telling this to the ambassador, of course, is preparing for her wedding to the Duke of Narcissus. Since the ambassador expects her to be marrying his patron, the King of Solitude, instead, we'll tell him that she's at the spa, having a cluster of pestilent boils removed. Tell him that, and he won't press too hard for the marriage, politically expedient though it may be." Pelagius smiled. "You know how queasy Nords are about warty women. But dash it, I feel like I should have some family around so I don't look like some old fool despised by his nearest and dearest," growled the Emperor, correctly suspecting this to be the case. "What about your wife? Where's she and the grandchildren?" "Quintilla's in the nursery with Sepphoris and Magnus. Antiochus is probably whoring around the city. I don't know where Potema is, probably at her studies. I thought you didn't like children around." "I do, during meetings with ambassadors in damp staterooms," sighed the Emperor. "They lend an air of, I don't know, innocence and civility." "Ah, show the blasted ambassador in," he said to Balvus. Potema was bored. It was the rainy season in the imperial province, wintertide, and the streets and the gardens of the city were all flooded. She could not remember a time when it was not raining. Had it been only days, or had it been weeks or months since the sun shone? There was no judging of time any more in the constant flickering torchlight of the palace, and as Potema walked through marble and stone hallways, listening to the pelting of the rain, she could think nothing but that she was bored. Asthefi, her tutor, would be looking for her now. Ordinarily, she did not mind studying. Rote memorization came easily to her. She quizzed herself as she walked down through the empty ballroom. When did Orsinium fall? First era 980. Who wrote Tamrielian tractates? Cozy. When was Tiber Septim born? Second era 288. Who is the current king of Daggerfall? Mortin, son of Gothlir. Who is the current Sylvanar? Varbaranth, son of Varbaril. Who is the warlord of Lilmuth? Trick question. It's a lady, Iowa. What will I get if I'm a good girl and don't get into any trouble, and my tutor says I'm an excellent student? Mother and father will renege on their promise to buy me a Daedric katana of my own, saying they never remembered that promise, and it's far too expensive and dangerous for a girl my age. There were voices coming from the Emperor's stateroom, her father, her grandfather, and a man with a strange accent, a Nord. Potema moved a stone she had loosened behind a tapestry and listened in. "Let us be frank, Your Imperial Majesty," came the Nord's voice. "My sire, the King of Solitude, doesn't care if Princess Galana looked like an orc. He wants an alliance with the imperial family, and you agreed to give him Galana or give back the millions of gold he gave to you to quell the Khajiiti rebellion in Torval. This was the agreement you swore to honor." "I remember no such agreement," came her father's voice. "Can you, my liege?" There was a mumbling noise that Potema took to be her grandfather, the ancient emperor. "Perhaps we should take a walk to the Hall of Records. My mind may be going." The Nord's voice sounded sarcastic. "I distinctly remember your seal being placed on the agreement before it was locked away. Of course, I may verily be mistaken." "We will send a page to the hall to get the document you refer to," replied her father's voice, with the cruel, soothing quality he used whenever he was about to break a promise. Potema knew it well. She replaced the loose stone and hurried out of the ballroom. She knew well how slowly the pages walked, used to running errands for a doddering emperor. She could make it to the Hall of Records in no time at all. The massive ebony door was locked, of course, but she knew what to do. A year ago, she caught her mother's Bosmer maid pilfering some jewellery, and in exchange for her silence, forced the young woman to teach her how to pick locks. Potema pulled 2 pins off her red diamond brooch and slid the first into the first lock, holding her hand steady and memorizing the pattern of tumblers and grooves within the mechanism. Each lock had a geography of its own. The lock to the kitchen larder, 6 free tumblers, a frozen 7th, and a counterbolt. She'd broken into that just for fun, but if she'd been a poisoner, the whole imperial household would be dead by now, she thought, smiling. The lock to her brother Antiochus's secret stash of Khajiiti pornography. Just 2 free tumblers and a pathetic poisoned quill trap, easily dismantled with pressure on the counterweight. That had been a profitable score. It was strange that Antiochus, who seemed to have no shame, proved so easy to blackmail. She was, after all, only 12, and the differences between the perversions of the cat people and the perversions of the Cyrodiils seemed pretty academic. Still, Antiochus had to give her the diamond brooch, which she treasured. She had never been caught, not when she broke into the Archmage's study and stole his oldest spellbook, not when she broke into the guest room of the King of Ghislaine and stole his crown the morning before Magnus's official welcoming ceremony. It had become too easy to torment her family with these little crimes, but here was a document the Emperor wanted for a very important meeting. She would get it first. But this was the hardest lock she ever opened. Over and over she massaged the tumblers, gently pushing aside the forked clamp that snatched at her pins, drumming the counterweights. It nearly took her a half a minute to break through the door to the Hall of Records, where the Elder Scrolls were housed. The documents were well organized by year, province, and kingdom, and it took Potema only a short while to find the promise of marriage between Uriel Septim II, by the grace of the gods, Emperor of the Holy Cyrodiilic Empire of Tamriel, and his daughter the Princess Galana, and His Majesty King Mantiarco of Solitude. She grabbed her prize and was out of the hall with the door well locked before the page was even in sight. Back in the ballroom, she loosened the stone and listened eagerly to the conversation within. For a few minutes, the 3 men, the Nord, the Emperor and her father, just spoke of the weather and some boring diplomatic details. Then there was the sound of footsteps and a young voice, the page. "Your Imperial Majesty, I have searched the Hall of Records and cannot find the document you asked for." "There, you see," came Potema's father's voice. "I told you it didn't exist." "But I saw it." The Nord's voice was furious. "I was there when my liege and the Emperor signed it. I was there." "I hope you aren't doubting the word of my father, the sovereign Emperor of all Tamriel, not when there's now proof that you must have been mistaken." Pelagius's voice was low, dangerous. "Of course not," said the Nord, conceding quickly. "But what will I tell my king? He is to have no connection with the imperial family, and no gold returned to him as the agreement, as he and I believed the agreement to be." "We don't want any bad feelings between the Kingdom of Solitude and us," came the Emperor's voice, rather feeble, but clear enough. "What if we offered King Mantiarco our granddaughter instead?" Potema felt the chill of the room descend on her. "The Princess Potema? Is she not too young?" asked the Nord. "She is 13 years old," said her father. "That's old enough to wed." "She would an ideal mate for your king," said the Emperor. "She is, admittedly, from what I see of her, very shy and innocent, but I'm certain she would quickly grasp the ways of court. She is, after all, a Septim. I think she would be an excellent Queen of Solitude, not too exciting, but noble." "The granddaughter of the Emperor is not as close as his daughter," said the Nord, rather miserably, "but I don't see how we can refuse the offer. I will send word to my king." "You have our leave," said the Emperor, and Potema heard the sound of the Nord leaving the stateroom. Tears streamed down Potema's eyes. She knew who the King of Solitude was from her studies. Mantiarco, 62 years old and quite fat, and she knew how far Solitude was and how cold in the northernmost clime. Her father and grandfather were abandoning her to the barbaric Nords. The voices in the room continued talking. "Well acted, my boy. Now make sure you burn that document," said her father. "My prince?" asked the page's querulous voice. "The agreement between the Emperor and the King of Solitude, you fool. We don't want its existence known." "My prince, I told the truth. I couldn't find the document in the Hall of Records. It seems to be missing." "By Lorcan!" roared her father. "Why is everything in this palace always misplaced? Go back to the hall and keep searching until you find it." Potema looked at the document. Millions of gold pieces promised to the Kingdom of Solitude in the event of Princess Galana not marrying the king. She could bring it into her father, and perhaps as a reward he would not marry her to Mantiarco. Or perhaps not. She could blackmail her father and the Emperor with it and make a tidy sum of money. Or she could produce it when she became Queen of Solitude to fill her coffers and buy anything she wanted. More than a Daedric katana, that was for certain. So many possibilities, Potema thought, and she found herself not bored anymore.
You here for orders or advancement? Or was there something else you wanted? There is a dangerous creature loose in the Serrano tomb. You already killed the hunger? Then take the 1,000 septums for this contract. I don't have any more orders for you. Try asking the guild stewards at Vivek City, Sadrith Mora, or Aldrun.
My pleasure, truly. Yes.
Are you here to discuss your orders, or is there something else you want? Your orders were to find that 6th House base near Gnar Mok, kill the 6th House priest Dagoth Geras, and bring me a full report on the 6th House base. Don't come back until you've completed the mission. Champion Rais Apulia at Fort Buckmoth says a patrol found a 6th House base in a cave the locals call Ilunibi. However, the one trooper who escaped to report has died of corporous disease. Before he died, the trooper reported fighting with monsters and cultists, and something about a powerful...
Good day, Outlander. I'm Balmora's caravaner. Tell me your destination, and I'll tell you.
Why walk when you can ride? Short trip, long trip, you decide.
These are the docks of Molag Mar, Outlander, and I'm Rindral Draelor, shipmaster of Molag Mar. What's your destination? If you like. Sure. I don't believe I've seen a with such a grand outfit in some time.
Outlander, what do you want? These are the docks of Tel Branora, and I'm the shipmaster. Tell me your destination, if you're outward bound, or if you're new to Tel Branora.
You're looking for a ship. What's your destination?
I'm listening. Go ahead.
Care to trade?
Ho, look, an outlander. Are you lost, poor thing? What do you want this time, outlander? 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 Sharing is good. I like sharing. Sharing is good. I like sharing. What do you want this time, Outlander? What do you want this time, Outlander? What do you want this time, Outlander? What do you want this time, Outlander?
Is there something I can do for you?
What's your story?
What is this regarding?
I'm Raisa Pullia, champion of the Legion garrison here at Buckmoth Legion Fort, and you're them. Caius Cosades sent you, didn't he? Caius says you're the one to handle this 6th house base near Nar Mok. Only one trooper returned. He died soon after, horribly disfigured with corpus disease and out of his wits. In his ravings, he spoke of a cavern on the coast. He called it Ilunaby. It's not on our maps, Try asking locals in Narmok. They fought with cultists and disfigured man-beasts, corpus monsters, I think. They fled the attackers and got lost in the caves. Then they ran into a half-man creature named Dagoth Garrus. This Dagoth Garrus slew the rest of the patrol, but spared the one trooper. He told the trooper he was being spared, so he might tell others that the sleeper awakes, and the sixth house has risen, and Dagoth is Lord, and I am his priest, and all will be one with him in the flesh. The trooper awakened outside the caves and returned here. We couldn't recognize him, and he didn't respond to questions, just kept rambling on like a madman until he died. That's what the dead trooper called the sea caverns where he found the sixth house base. It's not on our maps, and no one here has heard of it. Maybe the locals in Nar Mok can tell you where to find it, or you may have to search for it yourself. I've heard of corpus disease before, but never seen it. The trooper's flesh was swollen and covered with growths, his bones twisted and lost their shape. He spoke to himself, as if in a dream. We didn't recognize him at first, except for his clothing and armor. The fort chaplain tried spells and potions, but couldn't cure the disease. He died soon after he reached the fort. Didn't realize how fast corpus kills. It sure wasn't pretty. The troops seem shaken. I'm a little worried myself, to tell the truth. Nar Mok is an island fishing village on the Bitter Coast, roughly west of Caldera and Ald. Follow the coast. Yes, Brenton.
Ah, you bring good fortune with you. Welcome. Shorvar Horsemouth is my name. Master-at-Arms is my trade. I'd be happy to... I am Shorvar Horsemouth, Master-at-Arms and Apprentice of the Blades. I am a Master-at-Arms. I am a master of all the basic hand weapon types. Long blades, short blades, axes, blunt weapons, and spears. I am willing to train with weapons for a fee. We've heard. It sounds serious. We're glad you're on the case. He's okay, sour, a worrier, but he knows his job and leaves us alone to do ours.
All right, I'm listening. And this is Narmok, and you're? Fine. That's all taken care of now.
I suppose I could spare a moment or two. You're in Narmok. Go ahead. You ask the questions, and I'll do the answering. Everyone's worried about those two breeding netch that have been attacking. That's right. There's a pair of them that wander about north of here. They've come near the town a few times. We drove them off, but I'm sure they'll be back unless someone does something. I'm a thief. I was born to be a thief. I love to sneak around in rich people's houses and liberate their possessions. I enjoy puzzling out the security provisions on doors and chests, thrilling to the challenge and suspense of picking locks and disarming traps, and I've always had an interest in imperial law, property rights, criminal justice, bribes, and graft. Me and the guards, we're old friends, and punitive labor isn't all that bad. Free food and board, fresh air, and good fellowship. The Thieves' Guild is just like any other trade guild, an organization of craftsmen and professionals. Ilunaby Caverns. That's what they call the old sea cave up on the north end of the island, right on Kartag Point. Don't be poking your nose in there. Someone might object. Yes, that's on the western coast, not far from here. It's a gigantic boulder. Some of the orcs consider it a landmark. Why, I don't know. Some orc or another jumped off on a dare. It didn't end well.